Hello to all the heroes of time. My name is Vince South Blessed, aka the Indigo Babies, and this is Creative Technomancy. And today we're going to be talking about how random is not real. So, to get straight into it, random as a concept is something that we say and that we use and has a function in linguistics and has a function in mathematics. But like a lot of the words that we use, because we've got this preconceived notion and narrative that comes with phrases like random, it ends up spilling out into other aspects of our lives, either in terms of what we think is possible or in terms of like literally the inventions, the engineering, the psychological things that we try and create for our lives. So I think basically with this video, just be honest with what it is that you think about the video at every stage, and if there is anything that I say that seems different to your prior thinking, actually allow it to seep into all the other aspects of your life and what it may mean. So let me get straight into the point here. I would say to somebody, random is not a physical concept, and they'll look back at me like, well, of course there are random things. Their first point of contention will be to tell me something that I can't figure out. And I try and use that as the main example, is that there is no such thing as random. There is just complicated. And so when I say that there's no such thing as random, I mean there is no such thing as physical randomness. So, starting off, what about flipping a coin? Well, the question then becomes, when you flip a coin, does physics stop? Does physics stop existing? No. So either the coin randomly landed one way or the other, or physics dictated where that coin landed. So if you've got a coin and you've got heads on one side and you've got tails on the other side, the random answer would be orange. The random answer would be table. If it's heads or tails, then it's doing exactly what it's predisposed to do. The next thing someone would say would be rolling a dice. Well, the exact same thing is apparent. Does physics stop when you roll a dice? So is it physics that gets the number, or is there some level of randomness? Now, what you've got to ask yourself is, if you take that dice, if I take a dice and I don't roll it and I place it on a table, and say, it randomly came to that number, you would say, no, you just placed it there. So then you have to ask yourself, how many rotations per what second for it to become random? And if you actually calculated that and you have a definition of how many rotations, it's going to be one of two things. Either what you're going to be talking about is just getting it outside of human perception. Getting something outside of human perception makes it so that a human wouldn't be able to calculate it. So therefore, it might seem random to a human. But to actually consider the outcome and the process is random is incorrect. So when it comes to saying that something is random, like I'm trying to emphasize, there is a place for that in linguistics. But if you actually think, if in your mind, this isn't about things you say to people and pulling people up on what they're saying. It's about what actually happens inside of your head. If in your head you think that something can do something physical and random, that's an incorrect algorithm and is spilling into many aspects of your life. So, okay. You're in a cafe, right? And somebody comes in, punches somebody up in there, slaps them around the face with a fish, Dom Jolly old school style, yeah, just violates and jets out. You go back and you tell the story to somebody, and you're like, I'm sitting there in the cafe, randomly this dude comes in, thumps this guy up, slaps him with a fist, S's out like the tango man. Now, when you're describing that story, it makes sense for you to say that this random thing happened because it's something that you're not used to seeing. It's something that you couldn't have accounted for, and it's something that your peers aren't necessarily going to expect when you're saying your narrative. But if in your mind you think those actions were actually random, Now you'd be calculating things psychologically incorrect, because nobody would do that randomly. Even if they decided I'm going to do it randomly, there would be a specific reason why they wanted to do something quote unquote random. And then by virtue of them being able to do it means it's not random because it's physically possible. So again, it's somebody doing something that out of your comprehension makes sense to use the phrase random. But if you actually think it's random, you're going to come to the incorrect conclusion. So like I'm saying, if you see somebody do something and the psychology behind it is too complex for you to calculate it, and you say it's random, it makes sense that you say it's random. But if you actually think it's random, then all the mental algorithms you build around that are going to be incorrect. If you are building an invention and something keeps happening that's going wrong in it, you might come back and be chilling with people and describe it to them as this thing keeps randomly happening. And that might make sense to say at the time to communicate your emotional disposition to the work that you're doing at that time and what it is that you're trying to decipher and work out. But if you actually think that it's random, then you're not going to be able to solve what it is that you're trying to deal with. Because obviously nothing in the physical realm can do anything random. So up on the screen, I've had this part of my Technomancy suite on here, and I've just coded something in there. So it's about random frames flashing on a screen. And so this is going to be like part of the menu screen, right? So I can go here now, and with the way that I've configured it, I can start messing around with different aspects of it. So now you can see there's a bit of a change in the way that that's moving. We'll get that back to where it was beforehand. Then maybe if I bring this down and this down, start getting some different things in there. So basically, right, that's just me playing around and messing around with what is capable. But ultimately, just think about this. How can you have different types of randomness? That doesn't make any sense. There can't be different types of random things. Obviously, from when it's programmable, that's giving you an insight to the fact that it's directional. So even when it comes to the highest level of randoms that can be comprehended, can be computed, it's still not random at all. And so even, let me take this one off here and get this one up. So I'm going to be messing around with making a ray tracer and some textures and stuff, and I came across this video 2 days ago and I thought this makes sense. So
I've started making this little test shader to just figure out how we're going to handle random numbers. And so far I've just calculated this pixel index, which is a value from 0 up to the total number of pixels in the display. So if we visualize that on this tiny display, we can see that each pixel has a unique value, which we can use essentially as a seed to generate pseudo-random numbers for that pixel. So let's make a function called random value, which takes in this initial seed and transforms it in some way. I'll need to look up a good way to do this, but let's just play around a bit first for fun. So how about we multiply the seed by some large number, and then maybe square the result? I really haven't thought this through at all, but I'm thinking that these huge values will overflow the 32-bit integer, and hopefully the remainders will be kind of all over the place and appear random. To try it out, let's divide the result by around 4.2 billion, which is the maximum unsigned integer value, so it'll scale the result down between 0 and 1, and then we can just output our pseudo-random numbers. Let's see how it looks. Okay, well, that's not very convincing. We got a...
Right, so as you can see here, through him trying to generate visual feedback from a ray tracer that he's creating, he's done something which is way more random than flipping a coin or rolling a dice. But when it actually plays out, it shows a level of consistency, and it's interesting because this level of consistency that you're viewing is hard or has previously been hard for academics to articulate what it is about our psyche that understands that there's a pattern in this, because there is a level of randomness to what is being seen, but again, that is random in the semantic terms of comprehension, not actually doing something random. So this is one of the first interesting thing about computing with randomness, is that a lot of the ways that we create organic looking things with the spirals and the fractals and the the different types of fractals, a lot of the time it was people exploring random which gave us this mathematics of what we would actually call organic.
Funky looking pattern at least though. So I'll quickly try multiplying by some different values, because I'm curious to see what other kinds of patterns we can make. Alright, I've been randomly trying some different things behind the scenes, and my latest attempt was to multiply the seed by itself a couple of times, but with some random offsets added. And the output from that actually does look reasonably random, I'd say. So now, to generate multiple values per pixel.
So yeah, as you can see with that, you know, that was a guy who is trying different types of random to be able to create something that visually seems random to him. So again, this is, first of all, having to attempt so many things to achieve randomness should tell you something about randomness. And then two, the interesting thing about randomness is, even within the concepts that I'm talking about, when human beings are presented with actual randomness, it's usually quite jarring. So if you ever played a game where you got to flip a coin, they will have artificially brute forced in there that if the coin, say, gets 6 heads in a row, definitely be 7 afterwards. Because obviously when it comes to rolling or flipping 10 coins, you're just as likely to get 10 heads as you are to get 9 heads and a tails, as you are to get 8 heads and a tails. If you specify one of those answers, they're just as likely. So when things are being created to be perceived as random by humans, it's actually put within a casing of planned obsolescence, because actual randomness can do whatever, and there are some quote-unquote unsatisfying things to see, you know, like if everybody randomly won global lotteries from the same village, it would be unsettling for people. So that's another thing about people's interpretation of random, is that a lot of the things that are presented as random are specifically tailored to have outcomes and processes that look more random or quote-unquote fair to human beings. So this is just a perspective when it comes to technomancy, because one, when you're playing with random with computers, you can do a lot of fun things. There's a lot that can be achieved with what they call random with computers, because of the amount of times that you can get something to do something, and because of what my guy just showed. Actually, it's quote-unquote random, which gives us all of these opportunities for beautiful visuals, and the black box which is behind machine learning neural networks, we don't understand it, you know. So there's, the outcomes have been too specific, so they've dropped the word, but in reality the way that the black boxes work with artificial intelligence is as random as these other things that they say is random. So when it comes to technomancy, random is your friend, because random is always the process of some scientific so it's almost like something scientific, something physical has always happened to generate what feels like some of these more random, more emotional, more spiritual kind of synchronicities. And when you internalize that there's no such thing as random, it opens your eyes to what is actually happening. So I hope you're having a blessed day. Like and subscribe if you like, or subscribe to it. Any questions, feel free, and I'll see you on the next video.